We are continuing in the chapter 30. We're holding about a third into the chapter, which in the Hebrew original text it begins V'hine be'emes, and you could see in the corresponding English text, and in truth, V'hine be'emes shehi milchama gdela v'atzuma lishber hayetzer habayir ka'esh lahava mipri pachad Hashem k'min nisayim mamash. If you remember last week when we began this chapter, I noted some important information and clarity which the Alter Rebbe sets in the context of a frume yid's the Avodas Hashem within the framework of those who consider themselves frume Yidin which consider themselves completely devoted to Teiras Hashem and to the mitzvahs of Hashem Yisbarich. We mentioned that there was an important message for them in this very chapter. It's for everybody, but it sets an important clarity, because in the end of the day we look for the emes. We want our service to be genuine, we want our service to God to be authentic, and we want it to be performed be'emes lamite, with the maximum truth. And therefore, at times, there are situations that we could, like in anything else, we can err. When we come to Avodas Hashem, it's a healthy mind would not want to ever, in his Avodas Hashem, he would never want to know that there could be a different erroneous, if not steps, but erroneous perceptions about his Avodas Hashem. And therefore, it's important. That's why it's important to periodically retrospect and reflect where we're holding, even as religious Yidden, even as from Yidden. But in this Pedic, additional to the overall information which Dr. Rebbe relates to us, we noted then that there's some information over here which you can say that it could deal with different errors in the Yid who considers himself a religious Jew, a frum Yid, and takes pride of that, and sometimes contrasts himself with somebody who's not so frum, or somebody who is not a shemer Torah mitzvahs, and say that's me and that's them, or that's me and that's him, or that's me and that's her, etc., etc. And here the Alter Rebbe says, let's always put things in the right perspective, in the correct perspective. So again, we were saying this in brief, but we alluded to this last week in the beginning of the chapter, and I think here these words which we just read, this is and again with the subsequent message, or the message the way it's subsequently expressed, deal with this which we alluded to. And let me make myself clear over here, again based on these words over here. We know that mitzvahs are divided and compartmentalized. There's the mitzvah say, the positive mitzvahs, and then there's the negative mitzvahs, which means this is what we ought to do, this is what we're not supposed to do. In the end of the day, they're both of them mitzvahs HaKadosh Baruch Hu. They both of them carry, the common denominator between them is, this is what Hashem wants us to do, and this is what we do. This is what Hashem wants us to stay away from, not to do, and this we don't do. We stay away from doing. That's a leisese. We refrain from doing it. So many times, and this is the Alter Rebbe is getting at over here. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shakelni bidvari. Many times in our Avodas Hashem, we weigh in more the leisese, this which we refrain from doing, and this is the way we classify ourselves, this is the way we categorize ourselves, and overlooking this is the way we establish who we are many times more in the leisese, and with this sometimes we contrast ourselves to those who are not that careful in the leisas and the negative mitzvahs. Maybe in action, maybe in speech, and maybe in thought. And if you remember the last week, which I would mention again, you could always see it in the you put the Tanya, in the link. You just put in Tanya, and you could see all the past classes. Or with the text, you find it on tanyaonline.com, and usually within 24 hours of the class itself, we try to put it up. It's there usually with, again, in that the website, with the advantage it's only Tanya, and namely it has the text of the class. So you can look in the past class, you see when it comes to, this is dealing with leisesa, what the person is careful with, namely his eyes, which can trigger his heart, of the yid who perhaps judges his friend with the sages, the Mishnah to say, Al todinas chavercho. Don't judge your friend till you will reach his place. Doesn't only mean a physical place, but his state. And sometimes it could be expressed by his physical, in other words, the mekayim could sometimes be his physical place as well, where he hangs out, where it is, where his, where as a result of, or the way he brings parnasa, the places where he hangs out as a result of him, of his efforts to bring a parnasa. And therefore, there's a situation where one contrasts themselves over the other, and say, well, oh, I don't do that, I don't speak that, I don't look at that stuff, I don't think that stuff. So the Alter Rebbe says, when you place yourself in a, when you want to judge your friend, first of all, we mentioned last week, we generally don't have to be judgmental at all. But if someone wants to, and we periodically do, as human beings, we place ourselves, we try to contrast ourselves in front of other people, and we say, oh, I don't do that. And the Alter Rebbe says, he brings the Mishnah, don't judge your friend till you reach his place or his state, because it could be where he is, and it could be his schedule, which has been orchestrated for him, or even he was involved in orchestrating the schedule, the way he engages in worldly affairs in order to bring home a parnasa, to bring home a livelihood. It could be you're someone who is sitting at home, or you're a Rosh Kollel, a Rosh Yeshiva, and you don't have the same temptations. You're not presented with the same tests as this individual, which is out there in the nitty gritty of Elam Hazeh, and he has real, and as a result of him being out there, he's presented with certain nisyonos that you don't have, certain tests and challenges that you don't have. So how could you judge the other person? And with this, the Alter Rebbe says, Havei, therefore we have to be humble, shval ruach, again the Mishnah, which says you have to be humble in front of every single person, kol ha'odah, without any exception. Even someone's a kal shebekali, someone is considered a kal. We explained last week, even among lenient, he's lenient. Which again, we elaborated on this. Who is this person who could be considered a kal shebekal? With the Mishnah says, Havei, you should be humble even in front of that person. Not in front of the tzaddik, not in front of even another BAYT, but even someone who's a kal shebekal. You should be humble, because you don't know what he or she does to overcome his or her challenges. It could be that if you would be in their place, in their state, the Alter Rebbe says, or it's the physical place, even if you're out there, and two Yetzer Haras are not the same. And it could be if you would have their Yetzer Hara, it could be you would succumb to the message and to the signals of Yetzer Hara more than them. So how could you judge them? And because you can't judge them, therefore, Havei, shval ruach, you should be humble in front of them. I mean to say, you should truly be Havei be'emes lamite, that they're greater than me. So with getting back to this is again recapping last week's class, but getting back to the message which is being conveyed over here. Many times we contrast ourselves with another person when it comes to leisesa. When it comes to this, we're not to do, oh, I don't do that, I don't speak that, I don't look there, I don't go there, and so on and so forth. So Alter Rebbe is really telling us, and again, sometimes even as frume yidden, we don't do that stuff. But we have to take things in perspective and see the broader picture. We have an Eibishter, and we have a Torah, and we have mitzvahs. And the mitzvahs itself happen to be divided into two. Starting from Anechi Hashem Lekecha Le'elecha, which is the shadish of all mitzvahs hasei, mitzvahs leisus, the positive mitzvahs and leisus, the first two commandments, I am your God, or thou shalt not have any other God, al panai, which is again the shadish of the source, and from them stem all the other mitzvahs, the positive mitzvahs and the negative mitzvahs, like it says in Medrash and Gemara, as I'll tell us that Lanechi Hashem Alikecha, the Shadish Kol Amid Armach Mitzvahs Asay, the source, the root of all mitzvahs Asay, and Anechi Leilach Alakim Malpanai is the source of all mitzvahs Leises. So it happens to be that HaKadosh Baruch Hu divided and compartmentalizes mitzvahs in this fashion. But if you look at the whole package of Torah mitzvahs, you are somebody who wants to contrast yourself with someone else. You judge another person, which the Mishnah says, don't judge him till you come to his place, which means to say that you're an individual which likes to compare and place yourself in sometimes in the light as opposed to the other individual. But we have to realize it's one big package, and put yourself in this position. It could be that for that person to hold himself back, not to allow his eye to follow something which is inappropriate and immodest. And inappropriate Torah says, again, this is all predicated on the famous pasuk, which we say every single day in the third parsha of Shema, that a person is not allowed to entertain his mind, his eyes, his ears, and things which Torah says is prohibited to entertain to entertain yourself with. So this other person, it could be that he has such a burning Yetzer Hara, or he has such a Hara which is so passionate, very different than yours. That's the first thing that Rebbe mentioned. No two Yetzer Haras are alike. But let's put it again in the Rebbe continues in a different perspective, and say Yetzer Hara is burning, and he holds himself back. But the presentation he had is just like a regular nisayon, a true test. Like if the person has, sometimes a test in life, or in the yesteryears there was people had nisyonis tests in order to not to give up their life, like Avraham Avinu to give up his life, if not to deny the reality of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. These are formal tests which Yidden has as a whole in different time periods in our history, and then individuals. Starting from Avraham Avinu, famous test of Urkazdi. And subsequently, yet in hundreds of thousands of years, had these certain moments or days or eras of tests in their life. How much are they aligned with God and His Torah, and God forbid if not, and Chas v'shalom not the opposite. So this presentation, microcosmically, or even if you want to, in this particular case, of that particular day, where this person had a situation that his Yetzer Hara was on fire, and it was. And he has a very passionate Yetzer Hara, and he was presented with a certain scenario that to him was like an assign. If I do that, or I look there, or I entertain my mind with this, I'm going to be completely separated from God, like we learned in the previous chapters, namely Yud Ches to Chaf Hey, and the Chaf Hey. This is a complete separation from the oneness of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. For that matter, this is also aligned with what we just mentioned. We mentioned this parenthetically, but this is aligned with which we mentioned. The Alter Rebbe picks up on that medrash that every mitzvah leises is really Leilach Alakim Machir Malpanei, and every mitzvah say is Anechi, I am Hashem your God, which is the first two commandments, which Alter Rebbe derives or points out so clearly with his beautiful, brilliant, profound explanation in these chapters, namely from the 18th to the 25th chapter, that every mitzvah leisa, every violation of a mitzvah which Hashem says not to do, every violation of a leises, of a negative mitzvah, a person completely disconnects himself from his creator, like committing idolatry. And this person who had that test, or had that experience, had that presentation from the Yetzer Hara, to him was like a real nisayon. Now it happens to be that for him to overcome that, or let's flip to yourself. You consider it from a Yid, and you're considered somebody who doesn't get involved, who doesn't allow any, who doesn't get involved in anything of this above mentioned negative experiences, even though it's almost inevitable, and therefore again, the Alter Rebbe points this out in the previous week as well, in the previous class, as we explained, no two Yetzer Hara are the same, but in the same token that we all have these same challenges, that we live in the same physical world, which presents itself with these very obstacles and challenges. But let's say that you don't have that nisa, you don't have that problem, and therefore you consider yourself higher than the other Yid. But let's flip to yourself and say, look at my Abasei Taiv. We know again, it happens to be mitzvahs are divided into mitzvahs say, mitzvahs leises. in the positive mitzvahs and the negative mitzvahs. So let's present a scenario case regarding myself, which I consider myself somebody who is very strict and stringent and obedient to the word of Hashem when it comes to everything what Hashem says not to do. So I don't speak that, I don't do that, I don't look there, etc., etc. I live an insulated life, and therefore I stand taller than that individual which happens to have these different nisyonot, these different tests and challenges. But regarding my mitzvahs haseh, how am I when it comes to serving HaKadosh Baruch Hu? Let's take one example of my learning Torah. It could be that if I had an opportunity to learn, let's say, 2 hours Torah, it's a Sunday afternoon, I did everything what I had to do, and it is a clear road for me. There's no one's asked me to do anything. I'm not demanded to go to work, and therefore we know the limit Torah. At every opportune moment a person has, a yid has, he must learn Torah. This is a mitzvah. This is it says in Hilchos Talmud Torah, starting from the Rambam and Shulchan Aruch, Talmud Torah. If I have a spare moment, I have to learn Torah. So here, there's 2 hours in front of me, and from those 2 hours, let's say I only learn 45 minutes in those 2 hours. I wasted 5 minutes here and 5 minutes there, and I consider myself, look, I'm from a yid. I don't do anything negative, and even the 2 hours I learned, I tried to learn here and there, and I made it 45 minutes throughout these 2 hours. If you think about the fact that from these 2 hours you could have wasted 1 hour and 15 minutes. And the only reason why you wasted 1 hour and 15 minutes is because you did not want to overcome the Yetzer Hara, which told you to be a little laid back. Why aren't you learning consecutive to 120 minutes? Why aren't you learning consecutive these 2 hours? Because the Yetzer Hara is telling you sit back and take a call and interrupt here, go drink something, go eat something. So in the end, 1 hour and 15 minutes was completely wasted. And you did not overcome the Yetzer Hara because you felt that, I'm utilizing much of this time. Now, most of them, and much of this time, I'm utilizing to learn Torah. I have the Gemara open in front of me in those 2 hours. I established those 2 hours to be learning hours of Limud Torah instead of reading a newspaper. But Payil, you didn't overcome that Yetzer Hara, which told you to sit back and lay back and to be laid back a bit. To relax a bit, to be lax about those 2 hours. Even only 2 hours, 45 minutes is okay. You had the Gemara open, and you're officially learning, and everybody knows you're learning, and so on and so forth. But you didn't want to overcome the Yetzer Hara, which told you to be relaxed and not to take the 2 hours of learning so serious. So if you it could very well be that if you put that test, you compare those two tests, the test of Avodas Hashem and the mitzvahs haseh, this which we have to do. And again, I'm giving one mitzvah of Limud Torah, but it could come to many. There's all mitzvahs. There's 248 mitzvahs. You're dealing, obviously, not everything is relevant. Not everything is relevant, but not everything is pertinent to every single yid. Many of those mitzvahs, especially with the Beis Hamikdash, up till today at least, or up till now, right? Things could change in the middle of a blink of an eye. That we could have the Beis Hamikdash, we have all the kabbalas, but practically speaking, right now, if I don't have the 248 mitzvahs to fulfill, but I have many mitzvahs that in my full capacity to fulfill. Starting from Mimdat Torah is a very classic example, and coming to minyan and making sure to come on time to minyan, not 5 minutes late to minyan, as an example. When I give tzedakah, I can give so much and so much tzedakah, or be concerned about what's going to be if I give another $20, another $200, another $2,000, and another $20,000 for tzedakah. I have it, I can give it, but I'm not willing to bend myself towards this holy mitzvah of tzedakah, which comes from the same God, which tells the person, don't think that, and don't look there, and so on. It comes from the same, but I'm not necessarily willing to overcome that test of dropping so much money to tzedakah. Even though I know I have it, even though I could put it, I know it's a mitzvah, and even though I know that I'll bring nachas ruach to my Creator if I'll do it, but I'm not ready to do it yet. So compare this challenge. It could very well be you're not overcoming that challenge. If it's the mitzvah of tzedakah, or it's the mitzvah of a nicer mezuzah, or a nicer pair of tefillin, or all the other diyukim, all the other details in the performance of mitzvahs, or a classic example would be limud HaTorah, not to learn literally exactly you have 2 hours, I don't waste a second of those 2 hours, I will force myself to learn those 120 minutes consecutively without interruption. Not only am I shaking, am I looking Gemara truly with a full concentration, everything that I'm learning, but so it could be that me not doing that is I'm more lax in my Avodas Hashem much more than that individual which is experiencing with his passionate Yetzer Hara, which is on fire, which he has a true challenge not to entertain, not to allow that thought or this appearance to enter through his eyes. It's very well possible that his nisayin is greater than your nisayin. And your nisayin, in other words, nisayin means your test, your exam. Your test, his test is greater than your test. And when it comes to his test, you look at him like with a very deriding eye, and you say, he's right there, he's just about to sin, and if he doesn't, okay, he just made it, but I'm the from a yid, I don't do that stuff. I don't do that, I don't speak that, I'm not in that world. I don't go out to these places, even though the other person's compelled to. Could be he could orchestrate his life different, but this is the matzah of the state right now, that he's out there. But that's how we judge the other person. But when it comes to your mitzvahs asay, which it could very well be that test, that struggle, look at his struggle, those moments, the struggle which he has at those moments when the Yetzer Hara is pushing, that fiery, burning, passionate Yetzer Hara is pushing him to give in, to succumb to that taiva, to that temptation. That battle, that could be that battle is much more fierce, much more intense than your battle of learning those 2 hours consecutively. And yet, when it comes to learn those 2 hours consecutively, you could sit back, be lax about it. And it could be from those 2 hours you only learned 45 minutes, an hour and 15 minutes you didn't learn Tedas Hashem, which you were obliged to, and you had the ability to. It's just the Yetzer Hara presented you the different scenario, and you decided to succumb to the Yetzer Hara. So when you and yet the same person could look at the other person in a very condescending, deriding manner, because he translates, or he decided to put Yiddishkeit in a perspective of a very erroneous perspective, in something which he decided, and what he decided makes sense to him or her. And in the end of the day, that test, that struggle with the other Yid has, in his leises, not giving into that temptation, could be, and it's very possible, it is a much more fierce battle, and then you're learning for those consecutive 2 hours, or dropping the extra $10,000 or $20,000 to tzedakah, or anything in between, or you're coming time to minyan, or anything else when it comes to mitzvahs asay, and much less of a fierce battle. In other words, you have the ability to overcome it much easier than that person has to overcome that taiva, the temptation of a burning, passionate Yetzer Hara. And yet, many times, we consider ourselves the frum yid, the religious Jew, because we place Yiddishkeit much in the context of leisesa, what we're not allowed to do. Which part of it is true? In other words, Yiddishkeit is divided. There's the leisesa, and a person would be very careful not to disconnect himself from the Almighty. With any mitzvahs leisesa, even the Rabbanon, even a small diktu kal shadivri seifim, based on again the Arieh that never brings from the Gemara. Every small aveda disconnects a yid from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. It's true, and therefore we have to be very careful when it comes to leisesa. But we cannot contrast ourselves with another person, and in the way we decide to, because we decided that leisesa is what's important, the negative mitzvah is important, what you're not involved with is what's important, and the mitzvah say we do, it's okay how we do it. It's not that I'm not dropping the whole notion of learning Torah, I learn Torah. It's not that I'm not dropping the whole notion of prayer, I do pray, I give tzedakah. But if I can give $18,000 and I give $18 or $180, the challenge, that test, between $180 or $1,800 or $18,000 is much less than that person of Chas v'Shalom. If he drops and he succumbs to the Yetzer Hara, because he's considered Russia, and the Yetzer Hara is so passionately sending the message. Don't worry about it. Look there, think that, do that, etc. Speak that. And that challenge I'm ready to overlook. Or I don't look at that challenge, or I don't look at the battle which this Yid is having. And I say, no, I'm just not involved in that. So basically, again, we have to judge ourselves, and we have to know that Yiddishkeit is a big one package. It comes from one God. It comes from one Almighty. It's all part of the Eibishter's, Hashem's demand of the Yid, in the context of the Yid being a Eivid Hashem, one who serves and demonstrates his submission to his Creator, to his Master, to his God. So because he has that test, and when he does overcome the test, he has done much more than you. Because you weren't willing to learn those two executive the hours, the entire 2 hours. You weren't willing to do so, and you weren't willing to dish out a little more, few dollars with stuff. You weren't willing to buy the better tefillin, or to come exactly on time to minyan, or to stay on to the last guy. You weren't willing to do that. So why is the other person less? Why is the other person lower than you? You had a challenge which was much less fierce, which you were very lax about. So this is, again, with this introduction, we can understand where the Alter Rebbe is coming from when he says, he says this truly, it's a great war, an intense war, to break the Yetzer Hara, which is Be'er Keish Lahava, which is burning like an engulfed flamey fire, just because of the fear of God, which is considered like a real test, a classic test and challenge that the Yid has. So last week, in the last class, the Alter Rebbe pointed out that to this person we tell him, if it's a fierce fight or not a fierce fight, you have the adequate energy to overcome, because that mind governs the heart. It's in nature, incorporated into every single human being, even not a Yid for that matter. That's the way the HaKadosh Baruch Hu incorporated into the mere structure, the way a person was created, that mind governs over heart. And if there's a fiery signal from the heart to violate HaKadosh Baruch Hu's mitzvahs leisesa, we have the ability to overcome it. So there the Alter Rebbe says you have no way, no right to say, oh, I'm this in position, and my Yetzer Hara is passionate, and therefore I have to succumb. No, you don't have to succumb. And if Yetzer Hara is passionate, HaKadosh Baruch Hu gives you this, there's always this balance, this equilibrium between the Yetzer Hara and the Yetzer Tov, and you have enough strength to overcome. But if you're looking at the test itself, it is a classic test from the eyes of the bystander, the one who is being judged, who is judging, who is trying to be the Tadin. This is a real test the other person, because it's a mechamek deila, because your eyes are offering one thing, and then you have to know that there's a pachad Hashem, there is God standing there, mabitol, looking, while he's examining heart and the intestines of man to see if he's truly aligned with Ratzon Hashem. This is a true fierce battle, and therefore, when you look at that battle, now come back to yourself. Everyone, based on his place, in his state, BAYT Hashem, in the service of God, you weigh in and you examine yourself. If you're serving God with the same fierce war, intense war, and with the same test, when it comes to Vasei Tev, when it comes to doing, to actively doing what Hashem wants. For example, he gives the example we did not mention before, prayer with true kavanah, to pour your heart out, to pour your soul, to be translated exactly, to pour your soul with all your strength to the core essence of your soul. In the experience of davening, to fight with your body, which your body says, cool down. Don't be so intense with your prayer. Breakfast isn't just in a half an hour. Relax. But one would, and in order to have success with that, one has to fight with his body. And Nefesh Bahamas is an animal soul which are sending different messages. To which try to prevent the davener, the one who's davening, that he with his should have the appropriate or the full measure of intent in his davening. And they prevent it not just stamazay, they prevent it with a fierce war as well. And to crush the Yetzer Hara, and to crush that message which comes from the nefesh bahamis of the animal soul, which tells the person to be relaxed in his prayer, and to crush them like earth before davening. Shachris v'arvis midei yom b'yom, the morning prayer and the evening prayer every single day. And he says over here, Kedem Atfilah, because really that's a time when a person in the middle of davening, then the challenge is a bit different. And the real way to enter, it's like any other battle. You don't start convincing yourself on the essentiality of the battle in the middle of the battle, in the middle of the war. It's before you go out to war, then you say, I'm going to give it all I got. And even then, you're going to have the challenges and the obstacles of war itself, which you'll have to overcome. But the way to go out to battle, to go out to war, is you demonstrate within yourself, this is the most important steps that I'm going to be taking. And you demonstrate to yourself the absolute, you elicit within yourself that absolute conviction that this battle is extremely essential and I have to give it all I got. And that's the way you go out to battle, and that's the way you'll probably succeed in battle, together again with the obstacles and challenges which will inevitably come in the middle of the battle. But the same thing over here, the Alter Rebbe says, Kedem Atfilah, before davening to establish, yes, my body, you're going to offer me a breakfast, I'm going to hold my Baruch David, and the animal soul is going to tell you, be calm, be relaxed, and it's going to start telling you, explaining you about the different other important endeavors you have to be involved with in an hour or two, or the next business day, and so on. So you establish before Shachris, before you start, which is again part of the Milchama Tzuma. Also, this is an intense war to establish before davening, to crush the message of the nefesh bahamis of the animal soul, ki offer like dust, but he says, Kedem Atfilah. It's all part of also part of the challenge. In other words, not only within davening that you'll have to stay focused, which is again part of the Mechama, which we have with the Yetzer Hara, with the nefesh bahamis, which with the animal soul. But namely, or when do we begin with this counteracting to the message, or the messages of the animal soul is before davening, and every single day, because I daven very well on Wednesday, but where does it say in the Torah that, or Shulchan Aruch, that Wednesday's davening should be a better davening, and Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday and Friday, it's about lip service. It doesn't say anywhere. There's no exclusion. In essence, a person has to daven at mitzvah hanefesh every single day, in every single prayer, maybe Shachris, Mincha, and Ma'ariv. So this is a Milchama. We know that again it's a war to establish before davening, again to completely shut down the messages, or to shut down the body, or the bodily messages, the animalistic messages which are presented by the Guf and the Nefesh Bahamis, midei yom b'yom, every prayer and every single day. So it's truly a Milchama. But in the end of the day, if you weigh this fierce war, which it's a battle, Alter Rebbe says, I acknowledge it's a battle. Every mitzvah say is a battle. And many times, even though it's sometimes it's less fearful than a mitzvah's leisus, and we have a temptation, the bodily or animalistic temptation, something which, God forbid, crosses into territory of a leisus. This is what Hashem says: do not do, do not speak, do not think. But yet, in the same token, Alter Rebbe says, I acknowledge. I mean, to say could be a battle as well, especially when you're fulfilling a mitzvah, the way that halacha, the way the Shulchan Aruch wants you to fulfill the mitzvah. When the Shulchan Aruch says that a person has to daven every single day, have a successful davening every single day, it means every single day. And the Shulchan Aruch says Shachris, Mincha, and Ma'ariv, it means Shachris, Mincha, and Ma'ariv. So which means that as such, the Milchama, the challenge of davening, is a true challenge. And again, this is before davening. The Alter Rebbe says, B'shas atfilah, like we just mentioned, when you're on the battlefield, there's new challenges. Like it's explained later in a lengthier manner, even b'shas, when the person starts davening, that he has to toil with toil of soul, toil of flesh, to literally translate these words, because the mind could drift off very, very easily. Sometimes precisely at the time of davening, like the Alter Rebbe explains in the 20th chapter, that's when a person's mind deviates into other areas, which are not aligned with or not at all, very distant from what, or the words and the meanings, and his relationship with the Kodesh Baruch Hu, which comes precisely by davening. So he has to stay focused, and staying focused takes effort. He says, but whatever you're going to, however you're going to, in whatever manner you're going to flip this challenge of Avodas HaTfilah, and again, the way the halacha classifies Avodas HaTfilah in this above-mentioned manner, midei yom b'yom, every davening and every prayer, and that as such, this is a milchama atzuma. It is an intense war. Yet, in the same token, it's possible, or even probable, that the milchama, that war, that challenge, with that other party, which you're looking with in a condescending manner, which is right now fighting with a very passionate Yetzer Hara not to give in to a temptation where the Yetzer Hara is coming in full force. They're telling the person to think that, to look there, do that. That battle is probably much more fierce than this above-mentioned battle when it comes to prayer. And with that, you're not necessarily going to give it all you got. Not necessarily midei yom b'yom, not necessarily every day, or maybe even less than that. And if you are a little more on top of your davening, not necessarily every tefillah, because this is just mitzvah saseh in your eyes. So what if it's mitzvah saseh? They both come from the same God. And therefore, because of the other person's challenge, and that's the way you're looking at the other person, you're judging the other person based on that challenge, you had much less of a challenge. And we have to judge ourselves and examine ourselves. How are we doing with our challenges when it comes to mitzvah saseh? And then as he concludes over here, he says, and if you didn't reach this midah, which means you didn't reach this measurement of fighting with your body, with this intense war, in other words, you're not willing to fulfill the mitzvah of davening the way the halacha dictates how a yid is supposed to daven. Again, as we just mentioned, and Dr. Rabbi took a few lines to describe what Torah demands how davening ought to be. And with that, and if you're not willing to give in, or you're not willing to fight with your body, which is naturally challenging this Avodas HaTfilah, in this intense war, you did not yet reach that level of war and the intensity of the war which the other party is experiencing, with a Yetzer Hara which is burning like a fire, like a engulfed, flaming fire, with enormous passion, in other words, in his convincing the Yid, in his presentation to the Yid, with its passionate signals, in his presentation to the Yid, that the Yid should succumb, chas v'shalom, to that Avera, and the Yid, again, on the other side, the Yid has to remember to hold himself back, and to subdue and to break that taiva, to break that lust, to break that passionate temptation, because of the pachad Hashem, because of the fear of God. That war is much more intense and much more fierce. And if you're not willing to give into that, you didn't reach and even close to the nisayin of that other party. So when you put things in perspective, you realize that it's all mitzvah of Kodesh Baruch Hu, it's all mitzvah of Kodesh Baruch Hu. So first of all, again, we all have to try to be in it together to see how much we could all do, focus on ourselves, to see how I could increase in my Avodas Hashem, how I could be careful in mitzvahs leises. What Alter Rebbe is even going to point out, even when it comes to leises, not necessarily everyone is so clean. Not necessarily you, the one who's judging the other Yid, is so clean. And Alter Rebbe pointed us to a few examples that sometimes we take it for granted. We don't put the adequate emphasis even on leises as much as Torah demands from us to do. But even if you feel you're so perfect in mitzvahs leises, you have to challenge yourself, and you have to see where you are lacking in your commitment to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the way that halacha defines these mitzvahs, or demands how these mitzvahs are to be performed, as in the example of Avodas HaTfilah. So we all have to, when I say being together, everybody has to see where they can perfect themselves and to perfect another yid and to bring light and to bring the knowledge of Torah to every single yid and to work together, all of Am Yisrael, everyone with his own family, circle, society, to see where we could all come close, become closer to Hashem's Torah and to Hashem's mitzvahs, ultimately to Hashem. And we don't have to judge other people. We don't have to judge the other person at all. Not to be judgmental is the way of Torah. Al tadin es chavecha. But the Torah doesn't appreciate being done in the first place. But if you decide to contrast yourself in front of another yid, hold it. Put things in perspective. It's all Hashem's mitzvahs. If you feel you're so perfect in mitzvahs leisa, so what about your mitzvahs say? And it could be the other person's challenge in his leisa is much greater than your challenge, and he has to hold himself back from not chas v'shalom giving into that taiva, which is going to disconnect him from Hashem Echad, because knowing that pachad Hashem, and that's a very big challenge for him, and it's much greater, and again, much more an intense challenge. And these challenges, when it comes to mitzvah say, and that you're not so, it's a hitz, there's the expression in Yiddish. You're not so passionate about it. Just do it exactly. I went to daven, put on, but my tefillin, and it said to lips of them, yid. You do it the way the Kodesh Baruch Hu asked you to daven, or the way Chaninah tells you what true davening is all about. And here, Dr. Rabbi gives another few examples. When it comes to benching, all the brachas, and again, which comes prior to having anah, prior to benefiting, if in the context of eating, smelling, etc., you have to make a bracha. If you look in Shulchan Aruch, plain black and white Shulchan Aruch, how does it look in Shulchan Aruch? What it says about Birkas Hamazon? Look in Shulchan Aruch what it says about the bracha. You picked up a candy, you threw it into your mouth. Did you make a bracha the way Shulchan Aruch asked you to make a bracha? Not necessarily, but from a yid. From a yid, Shulchan Aruch says a yid makes a bracha, even the smallest little shahakal. It has to be with maximum kavanah. Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam shakelni bidvarim. And so too when it comes to every other mitzvah, birchas hanenim, and similarly birchas hamazon. You just grabbed the bencher, you didn't take the bencher, even you benched. Look in Shulchan Aruch and see what benching is all about. And it takes effort. Yes, it takes effort. But this is the same mitzvah Kodesh Baruch Hu, the same Eibishter which tells us it takes effort to express or to demonstrate our maximum effort, or to elicit within ourselves a maximum effort when it comes to mitzvahs leisas with the negative mitzvahs. It's the same Shulchan Aruch. Maybe mitzvahs leisas or mitzvahs asay. And so too mitzvahs have to be with kavanah. To do the mitzvah the way, because that's Hashem told us to do the mitzvah, not for any ulterior motives. So too when it comes to the occupation of learning Torah, Lil made harbe Yoseph to the mitzvah. In other words, the asik. If the Gemara says a asik potato, the limud Torah has to be in a way of asik, complete involvement, like someone is involved in asik. So coming back to the mitzvah, similarly, when it comes to mitzvahs, limud Torah, to learn limud harbe Yoseph mechavtzir, it's saying to learn more than your desire and your will, as much as you establish based on your nature and this which you're accustomed to. And even though I did mechamat, even it takes intense, even it's an intense war with your body, which tells you, after a while, relax, go drink something, go eat something, you'll learn tomorrow again. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants us to toil in Torah, because it says asik b'Torah, misyageh b'tkala, the lashon is toiling in Torah. Asmoder shkida b'limud Torah, misyageh b'limud Torah. Misyageh means that it's not just going to read a little bit and then go on. To toil in Torah means to say to learn much more than my nature, and this is what I'm accustomed to. And even it's a struggle, but am I overcoming that struggle? And that struggle is less fierce than the struggle the other person, that party had. So here Dr. Rebbe again gives a few examples. If you just, let's say, want to learn, you could learn for an hour, and you have another half an hour to learn, as an example, another hour to learn. You'll learn another 5 minutes. Say, look, I learned a little more. It's a small war that you overcame. But you're not willing to push yourself for the extra hour, despite you have it. Okay, I'm going to learn a little more. I'm going to learn 5 minutes more. Okay, so you won over a little, but it was a Milchama Ketana. It was a small war, which you overcame. And there's no erech. There's no comparison. Till Milchama Sayetzer, that Milchama v'Yitzhahara Beir Ka'esh, which is burning like a fire, the Mikra Rasha Gomer, where the person's called, again, this other party which we're judging, which is considered Rosh Gomer, if he would be considered a complete Rosh if he does not overcome, if he does not triumph as Yitzhahara to submit and to subjugate that Yitzhahara in the face of Hashem, in other words, to hold himself back from Chas v'Shalom doing that Aveda. And here this is the punchline over here, again, which we basically explained. But here's the Alter Rebbe, the wording of the Alter Rebbe. What is the difference when it comes to Sur Meirah? What is the difference in the level of staying away from evil, and what's the difference in the level of Asay Tev, the positive mitzvahs? This is all the mitzvah of the Holy King, which is Yachid Miyuchad, this one, this Hashem Echad, blessed be this Baruch Hu, blessed be He. And because it's coming from one God, so really there's no difference from that perspective and point of view. There's no difference between Mitzvah Leisas and Mitzvah Say. So before we judge another person as Mitzvah Leisas, we should put the camera on ourselves and see, am I overcoming even a much less intense and fierce war? And it could be the answer is no. So it's all mitzvahs which come from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Have a great day.